Picture a wind-swept plain before the towering walls of Troy, where bronze-clad warriors clash under a sky heavy with the gods' gaze. At the heart of this chaos stands Achilles, the Myrmidon lion, his spear a lightning bolt, his wrath a fire that consumes heroes and kings alike. Born of a sea nymph and a mortal king, dipped in divine waters, yet cursed with a mortal heel, Achilles is no mere man-hazer paradox, a demigod whose glory and doom are woven into the same tapestry. His story, sung by Homer in the Iliad around the 8th century BCE, isn't just a tale of war, it's a mirror held to the human soul rage, honor, love, and the fleeting spark of mortality. Over 11 chapters, we'll trace his path from a boy forged in prophecy to the warrior whose name echoes through 3,000 years, a myth so potent it shaped Western literature and still grips us today. Achilles' world was no fable to the Greeks. The Trojan War, dated roughly to 12,500–1,180 BCE by archaeologists like Heinrich Schliemann, who unearthed Troy's ruins at Isarlik, was a clash of Mycenaean kingdoms' bronze swords, chariots, and walled citadels like Mycenae and Pylos. Whether Achilles walked those plains or was born from bards' imaginations, his story in the Iliad 22,000 lines of hexameter poetry captures a hero both divine and flawed. Son of Peleus, king of Phaeacia, and Thetis, a Nereid goddess, Achilles was destined for greatness, but shadowed by a grim choice: a long, quiet life or a short, blazing glory. Spoiler, he chose the latter, and the world hasn't forgotten. His tale begins in the shadow of prophecy. Thetis, warned by Zeus that her son would surpass his father, was wed to a mortal to dodge divine politics. Achilles, raised in Thessaly's rugged hills, was no ordinary child trained by centaurs, dipped in the Styx or fire. Per some tales, he was nearly invincible, save for that infamous heel. By 19, he sailed to Troy with 50 ships, leading the Myrmidons ant-like warriors of Phaeacia under Agamemnon's shaky banner. The Iliad spans just 51 days of the war's 10th year, but it's Achilles' wrath that drives it, his feud with Agamemnon over a stolen concubine, his withdrawal from battle, the death of his beloved Patroclus, and his vengeance on Hector, Troy's prince. Every spear thrust, every insult, crackles with his rage of fury so raw it feels modern, like a warrior wrestling his own demons. Beyond Homer, the epic cycle lost poems like the Aethiopis and Little Iliad fleshes out his arc. Battles with Amazons, a fatal arrow from Paris, and the legacy fought over by grieving comrades. Archaeological finds, like the Lineae tablets from Knossos, hint at a Mycenaean warrior culture where men like Achilles were warlords, not myths, their bronze armor gleaming in digs at Dendra. Yet his story transcends clay and bronze. Philosophers like Plato debated his pride, tragedians like Aeschylus staged his grief, modern poets like W.H. Auden saw in him the cost of heroism. Why does he endure? Haze the eternal rebel-defying kings, gods, even fate, yet undone by his own heart. This series will storm through his life, divine birth, brutal training, Trojan glory, and the heel that felled him. We'll see battles through the dust of chariot wheels, hear God's whisper in olive groves, and feel the weight of a hero who knew death was coming but ran toward it anyway. From Thessaly's caves to Troy's blood-soaked plains, Achilles' fire burns eternal, a warning, a beacon, a mirror. What's your take on Achilles' hero or hothead? Drop it in the comments, and let's march to chapter 1, where a goddess and a king forge a legend in starlit waters. The craggy slopes of Mount Pelion loomed over Thessaly's plains like a brooding titan. Their caves and pine groves a crucible for forging heroes in the late 13th century BCE. Achilles, barely a boy, his divine blood still a whisper beneath his mortal skin, was no ordinary youth. Born of Thetis, the sea nymph who wrestled fate, and Peleus, king of the Myrmidons, as we saw in the last chapter, he carried the weight of prophecy, a life of blazing glory or quiet obscurity. His mother, haunted by omens of Troy's blood-soaked fields, handed him to mentors who would sharpen his body and soul into a weapon. This chapter plunges into Achilles' training, where centaurs, warriors, and the wilds of Greece forged a boy into the Myrmidon lion, his spear arm honed for the carnage that awaited. At 6, Achilles was torn from Phthias' palace, its bronze-clad halls and half-fires, and sent to Mount Pelion's shadowed caves. Thetis, ever the goddess, entrusted him to Chiron, the centaur sage half-man, half-horse, whose wisdom had shaped heroes like Heracles and Jason. Chiron, unlike his drunken kin, was a healer and scholar, his cave a trove of scrolls, herbs, and boar skulls. A warrior must think as well as strike, he rumbled, his hooves echoing on stone. Under his tutelage, Achilles ran barefoot through thorn-choked trails, chasing deer to build speed his legs, already swift, outpacing wolves by 9. He wrestled wild boars, their tusks grazing his thighs, learning to dodge and strike with a reed spear. Chiron taught him the lyre, too, its strings humming war hymns under starlit oaks, and schooled him in medicine-crushing yarrow for wounds, brewing fever few for pain. Your hands will save as often as they slay, the centaur said, watching the boy stitch a gash from a fall. Thetis' shadow loomed. Fearing the prophesy glory at the cost of youth, she visited in moonlight, her sea-green veil trailing like foam. Some tales, like Statius Achillid, claim she dipped Achilles in the Styx, clutching his heel, rendering him near invincible save for that mortal flaw. Others, in Apollodorus' library, say she held him over divine fire, burning away weakness until Peleus intervened, fearing for his son's life. Whatever the truth, Achilles grew iron-hard, his skin unyielding as bronze, though whispers of a vulnerable heel haunted campfires. By 10, he sparred with Myrmidon youths, hurling javelins at straw targets until they splintered, his aim true as Apollo's bow. He fights like a god, trapped in flesh, Chiron noted, carving the boy's name into a cedar tablet. Peleus, too, shaped his son, summoning him to Phthias training grounds at 12. The Myrmidons aren't born warriors, their loyalty forged in myth drilled in phalanx formation, shields locked like a bronze wall. Achilles, small but fierce, led mock charges, his wooden sword cracking ribs. You are their lion, Peleus barked, teaching him to read terrain, hills for ambush, rivers for defense. Knights brought tales of Troy, where Paris' theft of Helen, Menelaus' queen, brewed war. Your fate lies there, Peleus said, gifting him a bronze-tipped spear, its shaft carved with dolphins, a nod to Thetis' sea. Achilles, eyes blazing, swore, I'll make the Scamander run red. Yet the boy wasn't all steel. At Chiron's cave, he learned to love Patroclus, a dark-eyed exile from Opus, arrived at 13, banished for slaying a noble in a dice brawl. Older by 2 years, Patroclus was no match for Achilles' speed, but matched his heart. They hunted together, shared wine by Pelion streams, their bond deeper than brotherhood. You're my shield, Achilles whispered once, braiding grass into Patroclus' hair. Thetis, spying from the waves, bristled mortal ties could unravel divine plans. She tried to hide Achilles on Skyros, disguised as a girl among King Lycomed's daughters, fearing Troy's call. But Odysseus, crafty Ithacan, saw through the ruse, luring him with a spear's gleam amid looms. I won't hide, Achilles spat, casting off skirts, his choice for glory sealed. By 19, Achilles was a storm in human form, 6 feet of corded muscle, hair like burnished gold, eyes that pierced like javelins. He could outrun a chariot, hurl a spear through oak, and sing laments that silenced wolves. Chiron's final lesson was stark. Rage will be your strength and your doom. As Agamemnon's summons reached Phaear 50 ships for Troy, a war to reclaim Helen, Achilles stood ready, his Myrmidons chanting his name. The boy who'd chased deer now chased immortality, his heart a furnace of pride and love, unaware that both would burn him. Next, the sails rise for Troy, where Achilles answers destiny's call, and the war's first blood stains his hands. Blood sprayed the sands of Troy's shore, and Achilles, the Myrmidon lion, roared into the fray like a god unleashed. It's 1250 BCE, and the Greek armada, over 1,000 black-holed ships churns the waves, Orphelium's towering walls. The war for Helen, stolen by Paris, has begun, and Achilles, 19, with golden hair whipping in the wind and a bronze spear gleaming like death, is no boy anymore. Forged by Chiron's wild lessons and Peleus' iron will, as we saw last time, haze a storm in human form, leading 50 ships of ant-born warriors to claim glory or a grave. This is Chapter 3, the call to Troy, where Achilles storms the beach, spills first blood, and sets the stage for a decade of carnage that'll shake the heavens. Aulis was a powder keg before the sails even rose. 1,000 ships rocked in Boeotia's harbour, but Artemis, pissed at Agamemnon's big mouth, locked the wines tight. The Mycenaean king, all swagger and gold, stood on a blood-stained altar. His daughter Iphigenia's screams, piercing the air as priests slit her throat to appease the goddess. Achilles, pacing the shore, fists clenched, watched the smoke curl skyward. "This king's a fool," he hissed to Patroclus, his dark-eyed shadow, whose hand grazed his in the chaos. "Hell bleed us all before Troy falls." The winds roared free that night, and Achilles' ship sliced through the Aegean, dolphins leaping in their wake, his heart pounding for battle. Tenedos hit first, a jagged isle guarding Troy's coast, its garrison loyal to Priam. Achilles leapt from his ship, boots sinking in surf, his myrmidons a black tide behind him. "Strike fast," he bellowed, spear flashing as he carved through King Tene's men, their scythe through grass. Tenes, Apollo's own son, charged with a bronze axe, but Achilles sidestepped, his blade lopping the king's head clean off. Blood fountain the myrmidons cheered, looting temples as gold chalices glinted in torchlight. Thetis' voice echoed from the waves, "Beware Apollo's wrath," but Achilles laughed, eyes wild. "Let gods bleed," he roared, stacking spoils high. This raid, a brutal spark, screamed one truth: Troy wasn't ready for him. The Trojan shore was hell's mouth. The Scamander River's delta churned red as Greek ships beached under a hail of arrows. Protesilaus, first ashore, dropped with Hector's javelin through his chest, his blood painting the foam. Achilles didn't flinch. He vaulted into the shallows, shield high, his myrmidons a wedge of death behind him. "To the walls," he roared, spears skewering 3 Trojans in a blur, throats pierced, armor split, arrows pinged off his bronze greaves. He laughed, a feral grin, as he drove the enemy back. By dusk, the Greeks had their beachhead, tent spiking the sand, a palisade of oxhide and oak. Agamemnon strutted, scepter gleaming, claiming command, but Achilles' eyes burned holes through him. "A fight for me, not you," he growled to Odysseus, whose sly grin hid a warning. 9 years of war turned Troy's plains into a slaughterhouse. Priam's city, its walls God-built and unyielding, mocked Greek sieges. Hector, Troy's lion, led sorties that burned Greek ships. Achilles answered with raids that left cities smoldering. He sacked Lesbos, Lyrnessus, Thebe, 12 strongholds, and all his spear a blur of bronze and blood. At Lyrnessus, he scaled the walls alone, arrows grazing his helm, and gutted king mines in his own hall, his brothers' corpses piling at his feet. "No one stops me," he shouted, dragging Princess Briseis as a prize. Her tears ignored. Gold, cattle, tripods flowed to the Greek camp, but disease crept in. Apollo's play arrows, punishment for Agamemnon's greed over Chryses, a priest's daughter. Bodies rotted in the heat, flies buzzed like curses. Achilles' tent was his sanctuary, where Patroclus his heart, his shield mended armor by firelight. They shared wine, Achilles lie, humming tales of Heracles, their laughter drowning the war's drone. "You're my home," Achilles whispered, their hands locked, a bond thicker than blood. But Agamemnon's shadow loomed. When Achilles forced a council to end the plague, backing Calchas' call to return Chryses, the king's pride bled. He gave her up, then snatched Briseis from Achilles' tent, a slap to his honor. "You wine-sacked dog," Achilles roared, sword half drawn, veins pulsing with rage. Athena's ghostly hand stayed him, her voice a hiss. "Wait, hero, your time comes." He flung his scepter to the dirt, swearing off the fight. "Let Greeks die," he spat, retreating to his ships, Patroclus silent at his side. The war's tide turned. Without Achilles, Hector's Trojans surged, flames licking Greek hulls. The Myrmidons, grounded, watched their leader brood by the sea, his heart a furnace of pride and pain. Was this the glory he chased, or the doom Chiron warned of? Next, the wrath explodes, as Achilles' feud with Agamemnon tears the Greeks apart and Troy smells victory. The Trojan plain shimmered under a merciless sun, its sands soaked with 10 years of Greek and Trojan blood. But in 1240 BCE, the war's 10th year, a single man's rage turned the tide. Achilles, the Myrmidon lion, now 29, stood by his black ships, his bronze armor unbuckled, eyes burning like embers as he watched the Greek camp fray. Last chapter, his spear carved a legend from Tenedos to Troy's beaches. But Agamemnon's theft of Briseis, his war prize, his honor lit a fire no god could quench. Oh, let them burn, he swore to Patroclus, his voice a low growl, as Hector's Trojans pushed the Greeks to the sea. This is chapter 4, the wrath of Achilles unleashed, a storm of pride and vengeance that shakes the Iliad's heart, driving the war to its breaking point. Agamemnon's insult wasn't just personal, it was a dagger to Achilles' soul. In the Greek camp, a sprawl of ox-hide tents and smouldering pyres, the Mycenaean king strutted, his golden scepter mocking the hero's sacrifice. Achilles, backed by his Myrmidons' 2,500 warriors, itching for blood, called a council by the Scamander's banks. Return Chryses to Apollo's priest, he roared, his voice cutting through the plague-ridden air, bodies piling as flies swarmed. Calchas, the seer, nodded, but Agamemnon, red-faced, spat venom. You're no king to me, boy. He freed Chryses, then sent men to Achilles' tent, dragging Briseis away, her screams echoing like a war horn. Achilles' hand gripped his sword, but Athena's invisible grip froze him. Your glory waits, she hissed from the ether. He slammed his blade down, swearing, I'll fight no more for this dog. The Greeks bled for his absence. Hector, Troy's prince, surged like a tidal wave, his chariot wheels churning dust, bronze spear gleaming. At dawn, 3 days after Achilles' withdrawal, Trojan fires lit the horizon, ships burning, tents collapsing. Diomedes, blooded, held the palisade with Odysseus, their shields splintered by Trojan volleys. Were meet without him. Ajax bellowed, his tower shield popped with arrows. Agamemnon, sweating in his command tent, sent heralds with gifts, gold tripods, 7 lesbian captives, even Briseis' return. Achilles, lounging by his ship, tossed the offer back like spoiled wine. He thinks gold buys my honor. He sneered to Patroclus, strumming his lyre, its notes sharp as knives. Let him choke on his pride. Patroclus, his heart's anchor, pleaded by torchlight. The men die, Achilles, our men. His dark eyes, soft but fierce, cut deeper than any spear. Achilles wavered, his rage a furnace, but pride held like iron. Not yet, he growled, though his fingers traced Patroclus' arm, a silent vow. The war's drumbeat grew. Hector's Trojans breached the Greek ditch, their torches licking ship hulls. By the 10th day, the palisade crumbled. Nestor, old and hoarse, begged Achilles, save us, or wash. Achilles, unmoved, stared at the sea. Thetis whispered in his ear, your fate nears, my son. He sent Patroclus to scout, clad in his own bronze armor, a fatal spark. The Trojans, scenting victory, pressed harder. Hector, helm flashing like a comet, drove his spear through Greek ranks, felling Patroclus' friend Antilochus. Patroclus, in Achilles' greaves, couldn't watch. Give me your armor, he begged Achilles, voice breaking. Let me turn the tide. Achilles, torn, relented. Go, but don't chase Hector to the gates. Patroclus nodded, donning the bronze greaves, breastplate, helm with horsehair crest. At dawn, he led the Myrmidons, a black swarm roaring onto the plain. Trojans froze, thinking Achilles had returned. Patroclus carved through them. Sarpedon, Zeus' son, fell, his throat pierced, blood pooling like wine. The lion's back, Greeks cheered, driving Trojans to their walls. But Patroclus, drunk on battle, ignored Achilles' warning. He charged Troy's gates, spear flashing, cutting down 27 men in a blur Homer's count, brutal and precise. Hector, eyes like flint, met him at the Seeing Gate. Apollo, unseen, nudged fate. A spear grazed Patroclus' shoulder, loosening his armor. Euphorbus struck next, a glancing blow. Hector's bronze spear finished it, piercing Patroclus' gut. You thought you'd take my city, Hector taunted, yanking the spear free. Patroclus, blood bubbling, gasped, Achilles will end you. He fell, the Myrmidons' roar turning to wails. Trojan stripped his armor. Achilles' armor, Hector donning it like a trophy. Word reached Achilles by dusk, Antilochus' tears staining the sand. Patroclus is dead, he sobbed. Achilles collapsed, clawing the earth, his scream shaking the camp. A roar, animal howl that reached Olympus. Thetis rose from the sea, her veil like foam, cradling her son. I warned you, child, she wept. Hector wears my armor. Achilles snarled, eyes red, rage swallowing grief. Ill kill him, gods be damned. Thetis, trembling, forged new armor with Hephaestus' fire, a shield blazing with stars, a helm like a comet's tail. Achilles, reborn in wrath, vowed no rest until Hector's blood soaked Troy's dust. The Greeks reeled, Trojans triumphant. One man's fury was about to set the plain ablaze. Next, Achilles storms back, his vengeance a wildfire that burns for a Hector's head. All right, let's rewind and hit the Trojan plain with a fresh blast of Achilles' fury. The last chapter lit the fuse with Patroclus' death, turning Achilles' smoldering wrath into a wildfire that could torch the gods themselves. It's 1240 BCE, the 10th year of the Trojan War, and the Greek camp is a graveyard of hope, ships burning, men dying, all because Agamemnon stole Achilles' honor, Briseis. Now, with Patroclus' blood on Hector's spear, Achilles, the Myrmidon lion, is back, armed with divine bronze and a heart screaming for vengeance. This is Chapter 5, Clash of Titans, where Achilles storms Troy's ranks like a god of slaughter, his spear carving a bloody path to Hector, shaking the earth and the heavens in a dual fatal echo for millennia. The Scamander River glinted red under a merciless noon sun, its banks choked with corpses as the Trojan War ground into its final act. Achilles, 29, stood reborn in Hephaestus' armor, a breastplate blazing like a comet, a shield etched with stars and cities, its weight no burden to his rage. Thetis, his sea goddess mother, had delivered it at dawn, her eyes wet with dread. Your death follows his, she whispered, but Achilles' snarl cut her off. Hector's blood is all I want. His Myrmidons, 2,500 black-clad warriors, ant-born and fierce-roared, like a storm behind him, their spears a forest of bronze. The Greek camp, battered to breaking after Patroclus' fall, surged to life. The lions awake, Ajax bellowed, his shield a scarred tower. Agamemnon, sweating in his gold-trimmed tent, sent Briseis back with a pile of loot, tripods, captives, promises. Achilles spat in the dust. Number gold buys my grief, he growled, gripping his spear, its dolphin-carved shaft hungry for Trojan throats. He hit the plain like a thunderbolt. At midday, Achilles charged the Trojan lines, his Myrmidons a dark wave swallowing the enemy's flank. Lycians, Dardanians, Trojan allies. Homer's Iliad names 12 cut down in his first rush, their helmets cracked, guts spilling like wine from a slashed jug. The Scamander choked on bodies. Achilles waded knee-deep, his bronze blade a whirlwind, slicing through Polydorus, Priam's youngest, with a spear through the spine. Where's your brother, boy? He roared, eyes scanning for a Hector. Trojans broke like reeds, their chariots flipping in panic, horses screaming as his javelin punched through drivers' chests. Apollo, Troy's guardian, cloaked his men in mist, but Achilles' voice pierced it. No god hides you from me. The Greeks, blooded but electrified, followed, Diomedes' spear and Odysseus' cunning carving a path through the chaos. Hector, clad in Achilles' stolen armor, Patroclus' death trophy, stood tall at the Seeing Gate, his bronze helm a beacon of defiance. Priam, on Troy's high walls, clawed his beard, screaming, "Run, my son!" Andromache, clutching baby Astyanax, wailed as the city held its breath. But Hector, pride like forged iron, gripped his ash spear. "I face him alone," he swore, stepping onto the plain. Achilles saw him and charged, a meteor of rage, his shield flashing like a second sun. The Trojans froze, Greeks cheered, even the gods leaned from Olympus. Athena at Achilles' shoulder, Apollo guarding Hector. "This ends now," Achilles bellowed, his voice shaking the dust. The duel was brutal poetry. Hector hurled first, his spear arcing like a hawk, but Achilles dodged, quick as a panther, the point burying in dirt. "You killed my soul," Achilles screamed, his own spear grazing Hector's shoulder, blood trickling down stolen bronze. They circled, swords clashing, sparks flew as Hector's blade nicked Achilles' shield, but the Myrmidon's speed was godlike. Athena, disguised as Hector's brother Deiphobus, whispered lies. "We'll take him together." Hector, fooled, lunged. Achilles' spear found the gap at his throat, where Patroclus' armor failed. Blood sprayed. Hector crumpled, gasping, "Spare my body for my father." Achilles' laugh was ice. "Dogs get you first." He tied Hector's corpse to his chariot, ankles bound with rawhide, and dragged it through the dust, circling Troy's walls as Priam's wails tore the sky and Andromach's screams echoed like a dirge. The plain fell silent, save for the Myrmidon's cheers and the Scamander's gurgle. Achilles, blood-smeared, drove his chariot back, Hector's body bouncing behind, a grim trophy. The Greeks stared, awed and horrified. Trojans wept from the ramparts. "Haze no man, haze a fury," Odysseus muttered, gripping his spear tighter. Achilles, standing over the corpse, felt no peace. Patroclus' ghost lingered in his heart, demanding more. Thetis' warning rang. Death stalked closer with every kill. Would vengeance heal him, or burn him to ash? Next, Patroclus' shadow drives Achilles deeper into grief, as a fallen friend's pyre lights the path to ruin. The Trojan plain lay hushed under a blood-red dusk, the air thick with smoke and the stench of death. In 1240 BCE, Achilles, the Myrmidon lion, had just dragged Hector's corpse around Troy's walls, his divine armor smeared with gore, his heart a furnace of grief and rage. Last chapter's clash saw him fell Troy's prince in a duel that shook the gods. But vengeance for Patroclus, his brother in arms, his soul brought no peace. The Greek camp, buzzing with awe at Achilles' return, now braced for his next move, while Troy's towers trembled, their hero broken in the dust. This is chapter 6, the course of pride, where Patroclus' fall drives Achilles into a spiral of mourning and madness, his pious flames lighting a path to ruin. As the Trojan War's end looms, Achilles' tent was a shrine of sorrow that night. He knelt by Patroclus' body, laid on a cedar bier, washed clean of blood by Myrmidon hands. The corpse, pale and still, bore Hector's spear wound like a cruel brand gut pierced, eye staring at nothing. "You are my light," Achilles whispered, his voice cracking, fingers tracing Patroclus' cold cheek. Homer's Iliad paints the scene raw. Achilles refused to eat, sleep, or fight, his wails echoing across the camp, chilling even Ajax's iron heart. Thetis, rising from the sea, tried to soothe him, her sea-green veil dripping. "Your fate follows his," she warned. But Achilles, eyes red as embers, swore, "I'll burn Troy to ash for him." The Greeks, huddled by their fires, whispered of a man unhinged, a god in bronze, unraveling. The funeral was a spectacle of grief and fire. At dawn, Achilles led a procession to the shore, Myrmidons chanting dirges, their black cloaks trailing like shadows. Patroclus' pyre, piled high with cedar and myrrh, towered 10 feet, adorned with Trojan spoils, bronze helms, spears, the manes of 12 slaughtered stallions. Achilles sheared his golden hair, a lock for his friend's shade, and slit the throats of 4 Trojan captives, their blood soaking the sand as an offering to Hades. "Go to him in the dark," he growled, torch in hand, igniting the pyre. Flames roared skyward, licking the stars, wine libations hissed, and the Greeks circled, singing laments that drowned the waves. "Patroclus, wait for me," Achilles vowed, collapsing as the fire burned to ash. the wind carrying his friend's spirit to Elysia more, so he prayed. But grief twisted to madness. For 12 days, Achilles dragged Hector's corpse daily around the pyre, the rawhide thongs cutting deeper into lifeless ankles, the body unmarred by Apollo's divine shield. Priam, Troy's king, watched from the walls, his cries a knife to the city's heart. "Haze no hero, haze a beast," Andromache wailed, clutching a stern axe, Hector's orphan son. The Greeks grew uneasy, even Odysseus, sigh as a fox, urged restraint. "You'll curse us all." Achilles, deaf to pleas, haunted the shore, his lyre silent, his spear idle. Thetis, desperate, begged Zeus to intervene. The king of gods, from Olympus' peak, sent Iris to Priam. "Go to him, offer ransom." At midnight, guided by Hermes' shadow, Priam slipped into the Greek camp, a king humbled, his cart laden with gold, bronze, and 10 talents of silver. The meeting was a clash of broken souls. Priam, white-bearded and trembling, knelt before Achilles in his tent, kissing the hands that killed his son. "Think of your father, Peleus," he wept, "old and alone, waiting for you." Achilles, struck, saw his own mortality in the king's tears. "We're all doomed," he murmured, his voice soft for the first time. Lifting Priam to his feet, he returned Hector's body, untying the thongs himself, and ordered a 12-day truce for burial. "Mourn your prince," he said, eyes distant, Patroclus' ghost heavy in the air. Priam's cart creaked back to Troy, Hector's corpse wrapped in linen, the city's wails rising like a storm. The truce held, but Achilles' fire dimmed. He fought on, relentless, sacking Trojan outposts Pedasus, Hypoplacian Tebe, his spear felling men like wheat. Yet Patroclus' absence gnawed every kill, was a hollow echo. Agamemnon, sensing weakness, offered Briseis and more gold, but Achilles brushed it aside. "Glory's a lie," he told Briseis, now returned, her eyes wary. The Greeks pushed closer to Troy's walls, their rams battering gates, but Achilles fought mechanically, his heart elsewhere. Thetis whispered nightly, "Death nears, my son." Rumors spread of new foes. Penthesilea, Amazon queen, riding to Troy's aid. Achilles, gripping his dolphin-carved spear, felt the fates thread tighten. Patroclus' pyre had burned out, but its ashes fueled a darker fire in Achilles, one that would clash with gods and queens. Next, a warrior queen storms the plain, as Achilles faces Penthesilea in a battle that tests his fading soul. The Trojan plain pulsed with the heat of a dying war, its sands scarred by 10 years of blood and bronze in 1240 BCE. Achilles, the Myrmidon lion, now 29, was a shadow of the godlike warrior who felled Hector. As we saw last chapter, Patroclus' pyre had burned to ash, his death a wound that bled Achilles' soul dry, leaving only a hollow fury. The Greeks, bolstered by his return, hammered Troy's gates, but their hero fought like a man haunted, his spear heavy with grief. Whispers carried on the wind. A new champion rode to Troy's aid, Penthesilea, Amazon queen, her war cry a challenge to the gods. This is chapter 7, Vengeance in Bronze, where Achilles clashes with a warrior queen in a duel that sparks both fire and fate, pushing him closer to his doomed end. Dawn broke over the Scamander, its waters glinting like a blade under a sullen sky. Achilles, in his star-forged armor, stood among the Myrmidons, 2,500 black-clad killers, their spears a bristling forest. His eyes, once bright as Apollo's bow, were dull, fixed on Troy's towers. "No peace till the city burns," he growled, though Patroclus' ghost lingered in every shadow. The Greeks, scenting victory, battered the Scaean gate with rams, their cheers drowned by Trojan arrows. Agamemnon, bloated with gold, barked orders from his tent, but Achilles ignored him, his heart a furnace of loss. Then, a war cry high, fierce, like a hawk split the air. Penthesilea, daughter of Ares, stormed from the east, her Amazon riders a whirlwind of leather and bronze, axes flashing. She was a vision of war, tall, raven-haired, her chariot drawn by black mares, a crescent shield slung across her back. The Aethiopis, a lost epic, paints her as Troy's last hope, her band of 12 warrior women, slicing through Greek outposts like a scythe. For Priam, she screamed, a javelin felling a dozen of Nestor's men, the shield splintering. Achilles, roused from his haze, locked eyes with her across the plain. "A queen dares me," he muttered, gripping his dolphin-carved spear, its tip hungry for blood. The Myrmidons parted, he charged alone, a comet of rage, his boots churning dust as Greeks and Trojans froze, sensing a duel to shake Olympus. The clash was lightning on earth. Penthesilea hurled her javelin, its bronze point grazing Achilles' shield, sparking like flint. He dodged, quick as a wolf, and thrust his spear skimming her thigh, drawing a crimson line. She laughed, wild, swinging her double axe. It clanged off his helm, the horsehair crest snapping. "You're no god," she taunted, her mares rearing as she wheeled for another pass. Achilles, silent, struck like thunder. His spear pierced her breastplate, punching through leather and bone. Blood-sprayed Penthesilea fell, her eyes defiant even as life fled. The Amazons wailed, their charge breaking. Achilles stood over her, panting, his spear dripping. For a moment, he faltered. Her face, proud and fierce, mirrored his own. Some say, per Quintus Mannaeus Posthumerica, he loved her in death, struck by her courage. But the moment passed. "Another for Patroclus," he growled, yanking his spear free. Troy reeled. The Amazons fled, their queen's body dragged to Priam's walls. But the gods stirred. Thersites, a Greek loudmouth, mocked Achilles' paws over Penthesilea, jabbing her corpse with a stick. "Lover of dead queens," he sneered. Achilles' fist crushed his skull in one blow, blood splattering the sand. The Greeks gasped. Diomedes, kin to Thersites, called for justice, but Achilles spat, "Speak ill of her again," and joined him. The camp split. Some hailed his fire, others whispered of madness. Odysseus, sly as ever, calmed the storm. "Let's fight Trojans, not each other." But Achilles' heart churned. Killing Penthesilea brought no joy, only echoes of Patroclus' pyre. He fought on, relentless, his Myrmidons a black tide drowning Trojan outposts. At Thymbra, he ambushed Memnon, Ethiopia's king, another Trojan ally. Their duel, brief but brutal, ended with Memnon's head rolling, his obsidian armor cracked like glass. Yet each kill weighed heavier. Achilles felt the fates thread tightening. Thetis' warnings haunted his dreams. "Your end waits at the gates." Troy's walls loomed closer, Greek rams splintering oak. But Apollo, enraged by Penthesilea's fall, sharpened his bow. Achilles, blood-smeared, stood on the plain, his shield a star in the dusk, unaware that a coward's arrow was about to strike. The queen's blood stained his hands, but Troy's fall was no closer. Could Achilles outrun his fate? Next, an arrow flies from the shadows, as Achilles faces his final battle and the gods' revenge. The Trojan plain baked under a pitiless sun, its dust caked with the blood of fallen queens and kings in 1240 BCE. Achilles, the Myrmidon lion, now 29, had just struck down Penthesilea, the Amazon fury, her axe silenced forever, as we saw last chapter. Her death fierce, unyielding stirred something raw in him, a flicker of respect amid the slaughter. But Patroclus' ghost demanded more. The Greeks, fueled by his rampage, battered Troy's walls, rams thundering like war drums. But the city held, its god-built stones mocking their sweat. Whispers spread of Achilles' doom, a fatal arrow, loosed by a coward's hand. This is chapter 8, Shadows of Mortality, where Achilles faces his end in a blaze of bronze and betrayal. The Trojan War's curtain falling on a hero who danced too close to the gods. Troy's gates groaned under Greek assault, the Scians' oak splintering as rams swung like pendulums. Achilles, blood-smeared and relentless, led the charge, his dolphin-carved spear a streak of death. Head-sacked outposts Pedasus, Hypoplation Teba, his Myrmidons looting gold and slaves. But each victory tasted like ash. Patroclus' pyre haunted him. Penthesilea's defiant eyes echoed in his dreams. "Fight on," Thetis urged from the waves, her voice a chill spray. "But your thread frays." Achilles laughed it off. His shield he fessed a star-forged wonder, deflecting arrows like rain. Agamemnon, from his gilt tent, sent envoys with honeyed words. Lead us to victory, hero. Achilles spat. Your glory, not mine. The final push came at dawn, the planar chaos of chariots and screams. Eurypylus, a Mysian prince and Telephus' son, rode to Troy's aid with 1,000 spearmen, their axes gleaming like penthesileas. Achilles met them head-on, his myrmidons a black whirlwind. For Patroclus, he roared, spear punching through Eurypylus' shield, the prince's gut spilling in a hot spray. The Mysians broke, their bodies piling like cordwood, but Apollo, enraged by Amazon blood, sharpened his aim. From Pergamus heights, the god loosed invisible shaft-splayed arrows that felled Greek ranks, boils swelling on flesh, men vomiting black bile. The archer strikes, Odysseus cried, his bow slack. Achilles, untouched, fought on, his blade felling 20 more, but the air thickened with divine spite. Paris, the golden prince who sparked the war with Helen's theft, lurked in the shadows, a shepherd-turned archer. His bow gifted by Aphrodite hummed with coward's precision. He knocked an arrow, dipped in hydra venom by Chiron's arts, or so myths claim, its tip glinting like fate. Achilles, charging a Trojan knot, ignored a twinge in his heel, the stick's his untouched scar, his mother's desperate grasp. Paris loosed, the shaft flew true, guided by Apollo's breath, striking the heel's tendon. Pain exploded white-hot, searing as Achilles staggered, his spear dropping. No, he gasped, clutching the wound, blood pulsing hot. Trojans surged, his myrmidons formed a desperate ring, spears out, dragging him back as arrows whistled. The Greeks wailed as their lion fell. Ajax, bellowing like a bull, hoisted Achilles over his shoulder. Shield-bashing pursuers. Hold, brothers, Odysseus shouted, his cunning buying time with a feigned retreat. In the tent, surgeons Machau and Pordalerius, Asclepius' sons probed the wound, chanting hymns to Paean. It's poisoned, Machau hissed, lancing the vein, black ichor flowing. Achilles, pale and sweating, gripped Patroclus' old shield. Is this it? He rasped, visions flashing. Chiron's cave, Thetis tears, Hector's dragged corpse. Thetis appeared in a swirl of foam, cradling his head. Your glory is eternal, she sobbed. Short life, bright flame. He lingered 3 days, fever raging, dictating last words to Odysseus. Bury me with Patroclus, let my ashes mingle with his. As the sun dipped, his breath rattled out, eyes glazing like sea glass. The Myrmidons keened, their wails shaking. The camp Greeks wept, even Agamemnon, his scepter limp. Troy cheered from the walls, Paris preening like a peacock, but Apollo's whisper chilled him. Your turn comes. Achilles' body, wrapped in purple linen, lay on a golden bier, his spear laid beside. The war teetered, Troy's hope flickering, the Greeks' fire dimmed. But a hero's death wasn't the end, it was a spark for legends. Next, the pyre blazes, as comrades clash over Achilles' arms, igniting one last tragedy. The Trojan plain lay silent under a mournful dawn, its sands heavy with the weight of a fallen god. In 1240 BCE, Achilles, the Myrmidon lion, was dead, felled by Paris' venom-tipped arrow. His heel's mortal flaw, as we saw last chapter. His body, draped in purple linen, rested on a golden bier, his dolphin-carved spear silent beside him. The Greek camp, a sprawl of battered tents and smouldering pyres, reeled from the loss, their greatest warrior gone as Troy's walls loomed unbroken. The Myrmidons keened, their black cloaks torn, while Agamemnon's promises of victory rang hollow. But a hero's end sparks chaos, and Achilles' shadow loomed larger in death than in life. This is Chapter 9, The Fatal Arrow, where the fight for Achilles' legacy ignites a bitter clash through his divine armor, and Troy's fate teeters on the edge of ruin. The funeral pyre was ablaze to rival the gods. At dusk, the Greeks built a tower of cedar and myrrh on the Scamander's shore, 15 feet high, piled with Trojan spoils, bronze helms, swords, gold tripods looted from Lyrnessus. Achilles' body, anointed with olive oil, was laid atop, his shield and spear gleaming like stars. Thetis, rising from the sea, her veil a cascade of foam, scattered ambrosia to keep the corpse unmarred. My son, you burn eternal, she wept, torch in hand, igniting the pyre. Flames roared, licking the heavens. Myrmidons circled, chanting dirges, their spears clashing in salute. Achilles' ashes, mingled with Patroclus as head wished, were sealed in a golden urn, buried under a mound by the Hellespont, its shadow a scar on the plain. Haze with the gods now, Odysseus whispered, but the Greeks' eyes were on the prize. Achilles' armor, Hephaestus forged, a treasure worth kingdoms. The fight for the armor was a storm of greed and pride. Agamemnon, scepter gleaming, called a council under torchlight. Who claims Achilles' mantle? He demanded. The breastplate blazing like a comet laid before the chiefs. Ajax, the giant of Salamis, stepped forward, his tower shield scarred from 100 fights. I carried him from death, he boomed, voice like thunder. I held the line when he sulked. Odysseus, sly as a fox, countered. Strength breaks walls, but cunning wins wars. I planned our victories. The Greek split soldiers cheered Ajax' brawn, but kings leaned toward Odysseus' wit. The little Iliad tells of a contest. Trojan prisoners, captured in Achilles' raids, were asked who harmed them most. Odysseus' traps, they confessed, sealing Ajax' doom. Ajax, betrayed by words, went mad. Under Orthena's cruel spell, he slaughtered sheep in his tent, mistaking them for Agamemnon's men, his sword dripping with animal blood. You robbed me, he roared, foam flecking his beard. At dawn, Shane crushed him. He drove his own sword, Hector's gift, from their duel through his heart, falling on the plain, blood pooling like a sacrifice. The Greeks wailed. Odysseus, now clad in Achilles' armor, wept crocodile tears, his prize tainted. We lose giants to save a city, he muttered, buckling the star-forged shield. The Myrmidons, leaderless, swore to fight on, but their fire dimmed, their black ranks thinning. Troy, sensing weakness, rallied. Paris, puffed with his kill, strutted on the walls, his bow a trophy. But the Greeks had one last card. Philoctetes, the archer exiled on Lemnos, his wound festering from a snake's bite. Odysseus, ever cunning, sailed to fetch him, his bow Heracles' own, dipped in hydra venom a match for Paris. Philoctetes, limping but fierce, loosed an arrow that pierced Paris' thigh, venom burning like fire. The prince crawled to Oenone, his nymph lover, begging healing, but she spurned him, and he died screaming. His body burned on a pyre below Troy's gates. Helen, weeping, was dragged back to Menelaus' tent, her beauty a fading curse. The war's end loomed. Odysseus, now leading with Achilles' armor, hatched the final ruse, a wooden horse, hollow and vast, to breach Troy's walls. The Greeks, battered but cunning, prepared to burn their camp and hide, their hopes pinned on a desperate trick. Next, the horse rolls, and Troy's walls crumble as Achilles' shadow fuels the final fire. The Trojan plain lay shrouded in an eerie dawn, its sands littered with the ghosts of a decade's slaughter. In 1240 BCE, Achilles' ashes, mingled with Patroclus in a golden urn, rested beneath a mound by the Hellespont, as we saw last chapter, but his legacy a divine armor, and a burning myth sparked chaos among the Greeks. Ajax' suicide and Odysseus' cunning had claimed the hero's bronze, while Paris' death left Troy reeling, its walls still defiant. The Greeks, battered and desperate, clung to one last gambit to crack Priam's city. This is chapter 10, Beyond the Pyre, where Achilles' shadow fuels the Trojan horse's deception. Troy falls in flames, and his legend fights for immortality in a war's brutal end. The Greek camp was a husk, its tents tattered, pyres smouldering from Achilles' funeral and Ajax' bloody end. Agamemnon, his scepter tarnished, faced mutiny soldiers starved, their morale dust. Odysseus, clad in Achilles' star-forged armor, stood before the chiefs, his voice sharp as a blade. "We build a horse," he declared, eyes glinting like a fox. The plan, born from Athena's whisper, was mad. A massive wooden beast, hollow to hide warriors, offered as a false gift to trick Troy. Hippias, a carpenter with calloused hands, led the work, cedar beams hewn, wheels carved, the horse towering 30 feet, its flanks painted with Greek prayers. Achilles' spirit rides with us, Odysseus vowed, buckling the hero's helm, its horsehair crest snapping in the wind. The Greeks burned their camp at dusk, ablaze to fool Troy's scouts, then sailed to Tenedos, hiding in the island's coves. Sinon, a sly Greek volunteer, stayed behind, his wrists bound in mock surrender. When Trojan patrols found him, he spun a lie. The Greeks fled, cursed by Athena for Achilles' death. This horse is her offering to big for your gates, a charm to keep you weak. Priam, weary and grieving Hector, believed it Cassandra, his prophetess daughter, screamed warnings its death. But her curse of disbelief silenced her. Laocoon, a priest, hurled a spear into the horse's flank, shouting, "Beware Greeks bearing gifts." Poseidon's serpents, coiling from the sea, crushed him and his sons, their screams chilling Troy's heart. The god's favorite, Priam declared, ordering the horse dragged through the Scaean gate, walls breached to fit its bulk. Night fell, a cloak of doom. Inside the horse, Odysseus, Menelaus, and 30 others sweating in bronze, hearts pounding waited. Sinon lit a signal fire. The Greek fleet ghosted back from Tenedos, oars muffled. At midnight, Odysseus' crew dropped from the horse's belly, swords flashing, as they cut down sleeping guards. Gates swung open, Agamemnon's army poured in, torches blazing. Troy burned palaces, temples, homes flames leaping like Achilles' wrath reborn. Priam fell at Zeus' altar, his throat slit by Neoptolemus, Achilles' teenage son, summoned from Skyros to avenge his father. For the lion, the boy roared, blood splattering his bronze. Andromache was chained. Astyanax exiled from the walls. Homer's Iliad spares no horror. Helen, reclaimed by Menelaus, wept as the city screamed. The sack was merciless. Greeks looted gold, smashed idols, enslaved women. Cassandra raped by Ajax the Lesser in Athena's temple, a sin that'd curse his voyage home. The little Iliad counts 50,000 Trojans dead or taken, their city ash by dawn. Agamemnon, gorged on spoils, claimed Cassandra. Odysseus took Hecuba, Priam's queen. The Myrmidons, leaderless without Achilles, fought for his son, their black shields a fading echo. Neoptolemus, wielding his father's spear, carved a path to Priam's treasury, his eyes fierce like Achilles, his blood runs true. Diomedes muttered, watching the boy kill, but Achilles' shadow hung heavy. His urn, buried by the Hellespont, was a pilgrimage for Greeks' armor. Odysseus' prize sparked whispers of divine wrath. The gods, enraged by the sack's brutality, stirred storms. Menelaus' ships wrecked off Egypt. Agamemnon doomed by Clytemnestra's axe back in Mycenae. Odysseus, cursed for a decade's odyssey, carried Achilles' helm like a burden. Neoptolemus sailed to fear, founding a line that'd fade into myth. Troy's ruins, unearthed millennia later at Isarlik, whisper of a real war, its stones scorched, arrowheads buried in ash. Achilles' name didn't die. Bards sang it by campfires, his wrath immortal in Homer's verses, his mound a beacon for sailors. Was he worth the cost? A city burned, a generation lost for one man's glory. Next, the conclusion, where Achilles' myth rises from Troy's ashes to echo through eternity. Troy's embers glowed under a mournful dawn, the Hellespont's waves lapping at a shore littered with broken spears and shattered dreams. Achilles, the Myrmidon lion, was gone felled by Paris' arrow, his ashes mixed with Patroclus in a golden urn, beneath a mound that sailors would salute for centuries. The Greeks, hauling gold and slaves from Troy's corpse, sailed into storms, cursed by gods for their savagery. Agamemnon's blood would stain Mycenae's halls. Odysseus faced a decade's odyssey. Neoptolemus, Achilles' son, carried his father's spear to fear, his eyes fierce, but haunted. Yet Achilles' story didn't end in ash. It blazed brighter, a myth carved in bronze and song, its fire unquenched 3,000 years later. This is the story of how a warrior's wrath became eternal, a riddle of heroism and ruin that still grips us. Homer's Iliad, sung 4 centuries later, around 800 BCE, was the spark. Its 22,000 lines of hexameter didn't just tell of Achilles' rage, his feud with Agamemnon, Patroclus' death, Hector's slaughter, it bared his soul. Sing, muse, of the wrath of Achilles, it begins, and bards by Mycenaean fires carried those words, their lyres echoing his grief. The Iliad spans just 51 days of the war's 10th year, but it's Achilles' heart-proud, broken, human, that hooks us. He defies kings, spits at gods, loves fiercely, and dies young, choosing glory over life, or take the short path, he tells Thetis, and that choice, raw and reckless, made him a mirror for every warrior who dreamed big and burned out. Beyond Homer, the epic cycle lost poems like the Aethiopis and Little Iliad wove his saga wider. Penthesilea's duel, Paris' arrow, the fight for his armor. These tales, scratched on papyrus, spread from Athens to Alexandria, their fragments surviving in scholiasts' notes. Greeks saw Achilles as no myth. His mount by the Hellespont was a shrine, his cult thriving in Orbia, where sailors offered wine to his shade. Temples rose in his name, athletes in Olympia swore by his spear. Was he real? Linear B tablets from Pylos name an Achilles, a warlord, maybe our lion. Schliemann's digs at Isarlik in the 1870s found Troy's scorched walls, bronze arrowheads, a city sacked around 1250 BCE. Achilles walked those sands, or his shadow did. His myth grew wings. Aeschylus' tragedies staged his grief. Plato wrestled with his pride in the Republic, calling him a caution against unchecked rage. Alexander the Great, conquering Persia, slept with the Iliad under his pillow, modeling himself on Achilles' fire. Romans, like Virgil, wove him into the Aeneid, a ghost guiding Aeneas. Medieval bards spun him as a knight. Renaissance painters, like Rubens, splashed his wrath on canvas. Golden helm, bloodied spear. Modern voices -W.H. Auden's Shield of Achilles. Madeline Miller's Song of Achilles recast him as a lover, a rebel. His bond with Patroclus a heartbeat for new ages. Hollywood's Troy in 2004, with Brad Pitt's bronze snarl, grossed $497 million, proving his pull. Why does he endure? Hazer's flawed, fierce, chasing glory while wrestling fate. His heel, a tale born later in Statius Achillid, is our frailty, his rage, our passion. The Napoleonic Code, as we saw in another saga, owes a nod to his meritocracy, strength over birth. Nationalism, sparked by his pride, fueled revolutions. His defiance of kings echoes in democracies. Yet he's caused 6 million dead in a war's echo warns of hubris. From Thessaly's caves to Troy's ashes, Achilles is the fire we can't look away from. Hero, lover, monster. What's your take? Is Achilles the ultimate warrior or a tragic hothead? Drop it in the comments, and let's keep the myth alive. Smash that like, subscribe for more epics, and brace for the conclusion, where we weigh the lion's legacy. Picture the Hellespont at dawn, its waters glinting like bronze, lapping at a mound where Achilles' ashes rest beside Patroclus in a golden urn. Troy's walls, once God-built, are rubble now, scorched by the flames of the wooden horses. Night in 1240 BCE. Achilles, the Myrmidon lion, chose a short life of blazing glory over a long, quiet one, and that choice, defiant, reckless, human, set the world alight. His saga, sung by Homer in the Iliad's 22,000 lines around 800 BCE, isn't just a war story. It's a raw slice of the human soul, rage, love, pride, and the shadow of death. From a boy dipped in Styx's waters to a warrior who shook Olympus, Achilles' fire still burns. Let's weigh his legacy. Hero, hothead, or the myth that mirrors us all. His life was a storm. Born of Thetis, a sea goddess, and Peleus, a mortal king, Achilles was forged by centaur Chiron into a weapon swift as a falcon, deadly as a spear. At 19, he sailed to Troy with 50 Myrmidon ships, his heart set on glory. The Iliad captures 51 days of the war's 10th year. His feud with Agamemnon over Briseis, his withdrawal that bled the Greeks, Patroclus' death under Hector's spear, and his vengeance, a rampage that felled Troy's prince and Penthesilea's Amazons. Paris' arrow, guided by Apollo, struck his heel, the mortal flaw from Thetis' desperate grip. His death sparked chaos, Ajax' suicide. Odysseus' cunning, the horse's ruse, but Troy fell. Its ashes a testament to his wrath. Was he real? Linear B tablets from Pylos name an Achilles. A warlord Schliemann's digs at Isarlik uncovered a burned city. Arrowheads buried in 1250 BCE straighter, man or myth. His story struck like lightning. Achilles' legacy is a paradox. His pride-fueled victories, 12 cities sacked, Hector's corpse dragged, but caused thousands, Greek and Trojan alike. His love for Patroclus, tender and fierce, humanized him. Homer's hints, amplified by Madeline Miller's Song of Achilles, make him a beacon for devotion across ages. His defiant spitting at kings, mocking gods sparked nationalism's fire in Germany, liberalism's ember in Spain, much like Napoleon's wars, as we've traced before. His meritocracy, rewarding strength over birth, echoes in modern laws, from the Napoleonic Code to democratic ideals. Yet his rage warns of ruin, 6 million dead in his wars echo. A lesson for leaders drunk on power. The Greeks worshipped him. His Hellespont mound drew sailors, wine offerings, cults in Olbia, and Lucae sang his name. Alexander the Great carried the Iliad to Persia, dreaming Achilles' glory. Plato scolded his hubris, Aeschylus staged his grief. Renaissance painters splashed his bronze helm canvas. Hollywood's Troy grossed $500 million in 2004. Brad Pitt snarls selling tickets. Auden's poems, Miller's novels, they reforge Achilles as lover, rebel, tragedy. Hayes our mirror, chasing greatness, wrestling flaws, knowing death waits. His heel, a later myth, is our frailty, his fire, our ambition. What's Achilles to you? A hero who burned for glory, or a hothead who burned the world? Drop your take in the comments, smash that like, and subscribe for more epics. Alexander, Caesar, or another legend. You tell us. His myth endures, because it's ours. Every choice, every fight, every love carries his echo. From Troy's ashes to today's screens, Achilles is the flame that never fades.